Hello and welcome to episode 44 of the SAP on Azure Video Podcast. Today is June 4th, and together with Goran and Robert, we are here to talk about anything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hello, everyone.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Today, I'm very happy to have Santosh and Karan from Microsoft Digital with us. They are responsible for implementing and running the SAP systems at Microsoft, and they will talk about how to use auto-scaling with SAP. But before we go there, like always, let's quickly take a look at the news from this week. So obviously, this week was SAPPHIRE. SAPPHIRE this year is a little different, or SAPPHIRE Now is a little different than last year and obviously the years before, because it's not an event like 1 week, but it's really spread across multiple weeks. And this week was just the kickoff. So Julia White, and I think most of us know Julia White from Microsoft, or ex-Microsoft, and now joined SAP as the Chief Marketing and Solution Officer. She basically guided through the whole SAPPHIRE event. At first, there was a long statement or segment with Christian Klein, talking or highlighting a few strategic topics for SAP. And then at the end, there was also an interview with Hasso Plattner. So Julia interviewed Hasso, and Hasso talked a little about his point of view. The video is on YouTube. Here's the link, basically. It's a 1.5 hour keynote session. I have to admit, I mean, you have to be clear, SAPPHIRE is not a developer event. It's not a technical event. So there's a lot of marketing, and obviously you cannot really compare it with, for example, the keynote from Build from last week with Satya, where he had like 20 minutes, very crisp, some highlights, and there were a lot of subsequent sessions there. This is really, SAP's marketing event, more or less, and this was the kickoff, and in the subsequent sessions that will probably happen over the next few weeks, we'll probably get more details. Nevertheless, SAP has published a so-called innovation news guide, and in this news guide, they highlight a few things that were obviously core and center also at the keynote. So, for example, the Business Technology Platform, but then also sustainability is an important topic here. We have the Intelligent Suite, obviously, with this modular ERP that I think was really a highlight or a focus on the keynote. The Industry Cloud, the specific Industry Cloud solutions there, Business Process Intelligence, and the Business Network. And then, we talked about the Business Process Intelligence already. So this, I think this would be called the Book of News on the Microsoft side. Here it's called the Innovation News Guide, and it highlights a few things from SAPPHIRE. I think this is still quite high level, and I really hope that in the next weeks, when we have actually the sessions behind some of these things, that we'll learn much more about some of these topics. Now, one of these topics, the Business Technology Platform, Jürgen Müller posted about this. There's a new guide released. I think it's a good introduction, especially, I mean, if you look at this at the Business Technology Platform from a Microsoft side, there still are a lot of customers that not really have heard about the BTP, about the Business Technology Platform, even if they are working in the SAP area. And I think this document, it's still high level, but it gives a good overview of what is the BTP? What are some of the core components of the Business Technology Platform? So I think if you're new, if you want to get an idea of what the BTP is, this document actually does a pretty good job to cover some of these points. Why the BTP makes sense and why it's so important also for SAP. Now, when talking about BTP, SAP now announced that on July 1st, the free tier for the Business Technology Platform will be available. This free tier will first start for customers, for existing customers of BTP, and then it will soon broaden up, and we opened also for anyone, for individual business users and so. But I think it's a really good starting point. And some of the solutions there, like here 30 services. I think we don't know exactly yet what these 30 services will be, but I know there has been a demand for this free tier model for quite some time, and it's good to see that SAP is now making this free tier available for the customers. Then going on, there was an interesting blog post by Martin Bachmann. You might have heard, or I think we talked about this as part of our extended partnership with SAP and Microsoft. There's also one focus area where we talk about eventing, so really bridging the events from the SAP side with the Microsoft side, and vice versa, obviously. So in this context, obviously, it is very important to have the events from your success factors, your ERP, your S/4HANA system, and so on available. And for the classic ECC, there has already been an add-on available for some time now. But for S/4HANA, this specific add-on was not available. And now SAP also has released this add-on for S/4HANA, which allows you then to send these events to SAP Event Mesh. And from there, obviously, you can plug into the event-driven architectures that allow you to really build these event-driven architectures. That's what I want to say. Good. With this, let's switch to the Microsoft side, and the Teams integration is obviously also something that is part of this extended partnership. And what I really like, and I think we have also talked about this for quite some time, that SAP and Microsoft, we are investing in these joint integrations. We had Veronika Reger on the show some time ago, where she also talked about this partnership and also talked about the Teams integration. But I think it's very clear that there's so much room for partners, for customers to build their own integrations, to really focus on very specific scenarios and to build these integration scenarios. And the Microsoft team, the Teams team now has created the site with developer resources where they talk about different industry solutions. And it's very important. These are not solutions that you can install and work, but they are supposed to give you some ideas of how this integration could look like. So, for example, if you click here on the retail scenario, then this 112-page document, the Book of Dreams for Retails, opened up. And here, basically, what the Teams team has done is they walk you through different scenarios. So here, the sales professional is notified in Teams, and this is how it could look like in Teams and on your mobile device. And then they guide you through scenarios, how this integration could look like. In this specific case, it's not SAP specific. This is really about the industry scenario and how it could look like. But if you look from this with your SAP glasses on, I think this is really something that can be very exciting to inspire customers, partners to build these kinds of integrations also on their own. Good. And then also going into this Power Platform area, and I also talked about this in the last show, where we talk about this fusion of teams. And again, for me, this fusion of teams is something that is even more relevant when we talk about using Power Platform and SAP, where we have a fusion of teams of the low-code Power Platform user, the citizen user, but then also the SAP user who knows about maybe BAPIs and RFCs, who knows about the OData services that are part of your SAP system and stuff like that, and how these different teams can work together. And we had shared some presentations about this and learning paths the last time. Here's now a webinar. It's a, in the meantime, recorded webinar. I think it's roughly an hour long, where Kartik and Matt walk you through these different processes. So I think it's a really nice webinar that explains a little more what we think of these fusions of teams, what Microsoft is really there investing to make sure that these different teams can work together. So if you have an hour, I can definitely recommend to sign up here and watch this webinar. So one last point that I also found really interesting, Office Scripts is now generally available. And you might not know what Office Scripts is, but if you use Excel in a browser or something like that, then you also want to automate processes. Then now this Office Scripts allows you, similar like VBA in the past, to record certain steps and then automate these specific steps. So there's a short video that outlines how you really in the browser.
Macros or something like that.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes, macros. Exactly. So you really record the steps that you want to do, and then you replay the macro. Exactly. So macro for the web, basically, and that's all great. But what's even better, from my point of view, is that there's already an integration in Power Automate. So you can really now have your processes in Power Automate, and then you jump and call one of these scripts, for example. So it's a really powerful new way, from my point of view, to use Power Automate and this scripting functionality to automate your processes, including the processes that cover Excel. Good. So with this, let me stop sharing and let me welcome again and hand over to Karan and Santosh. It's really great that you're here, because I always love to hear what we are doing, what we're also doing really internally with our SAP landscapes. So Karan, Santosh, maybe you can quickly introduce yourself and can talk about your role. And then I'm really looking forward to your presentation and the demo that you had prepared.
Yeah, hi. So hi everyone. I'm Santosh Rajput, part of Microsoft Digital team, and we are responsible for running the mission critical SAP and other workload which is important for Microsoft's business, and we have to ensure that our applications are running perfectly, and also we are able to meet the future requirements and able to integrate with a lot of Azure services.
Great.
Hey, hi Holger. So yeah, I'm Karan. I am one of the software engineers who worked behind realizing this vision of auto scaling. I'm part of the Microsoft digital team. So just like you said, right? So you were interested in knowing more about what we are doing internally. So that's one of the great things about our team, is that whatever we do internally, we always keep everything in perspective with respect to our partners, and we make sure that whatever we do internally is as generic so that our partners can pick it up as quickly as possible. So that's what we aim to do.
No, I think that's really great. And I mean, we had Hans Reuter on the show some time back, and he also talked about how Microsoft runs SAP and the lessons learned. And for me, honestly, this is one of the, in addition to the virtual machines that we have and the architecture and the infrastructure and all the services that we provide, for me, one of the key aspects of other customers running SAP on Azure is that we do this ourselves, and exactly what you are doing. I mean, you are making the very same things that also our partners and customers can leverage and benefit from. So it's always fantastic to listen to what we are actually doing internally.
That's right. So we are giving that, like, what do you call it, a margin of risk that we can take in order to try out some new things and prove it to our partners that Microsoft technologies can be like used in so many different ways with SAP.
Great.
Yeah. So let me just share my screen and then we can get started.
Yeah,
do you guys confirm?
Yes.
Yep. Good.
Great. Yeah, Santosh, you can take over.
Thanks, Karan. So this idea started as a hackathon project internally. So I'm with Microsoft since 5 years, and I was part of the feature crew team which migrated all the SAP workloads from on-premise to Azure, And after moving, I mean, initially our approach was like, let us lift and shift all the workloads from on-premise to Azure. And then once it is moved to Azure, then we can leverage other lot of Azure services, integrate with those services, and also benefit from the cloud. So after migration, I started thinking, okay, what all things we can do, and how we can take maximum benefits from cloud, running our workloads in cloud. And then this idea came into my mind that, okay, we we can save cost by switching off the virtual machines, but there are a lot of conditions for switching off the VM. We will shutting down VM, we will require to gracefully shut down SAP application servers. So all those things came into mind, and then we sat down, we listed all the prerequisites, all the different scenarios. So I will start with the first with the problem. So why this is required, and what is the thought behind this? So SAP is a like classical application because it was not designed for cloud environment. It was mainly designed for on-premises setup. And when we used to do, I mean, I'm into SAP field for 15 years, and I have consulted for many customers. And the approach we used to follow earlier in on-premise case was like, okay, we will do the sizing for minimum 3 years. So sizing used to be for 3 to 5 years, and it will be like fixed, and we will like not utilize the capacity initially, and in medium term we will start utilizing the capacity at a, I mean, like good level, and then at the end of the age of hardware we will be like almost squeezed. So here in cloud we have a lot of flexibility. We don't need to upfront, I mean, provision everything.
Yeah.
And when we did the migration, we simply did the lift and shift. And we don't have every day, we are not seeing the spikes of load. And business also has a lot of different events. So we have like quarter ends or year ends, then we have festive season. So those are the events when there is heavy load on system. And then there are other weekly or say monthly loads. So we know most of the loads by certainty that, okay, this is the time when we are going to see maximum load on system. And other periods are comparatively, I mean, fine to reduce the capacity. But if we do this all things manually, it is going to be very, I mean, complex. And also, if we are involving manual efforts or individuals, then again there are chances that we will do mistake and it will have adverse impact. So how can we automatically or dynamically resolve this problem? So all those logic we have put in place using different Azure services and also via our code. So code is providing the logic, and also we have different services which are enabling us to solve this problem. So this is the high level idea. We will go ahead, and in I mean, other slides we will see that in more detail. Yeah, Karan, next slide. Yeah, so as I mentioned, okay, what problem we are solving, and yeah, so that is already covered. So outcome, so we are our outcome is agility and also the cost optimization. So cloud, because cloud provides option to run our workloads, be it SAP or other applications, we have agility. Like, okay, whenever we want, we can go for specific load, I mean, services, and it's like pay as you go for most of the services. So that's why we can leverage those benefits which were not there in on-premise case, and we can optimize our cost, and that cost or that budget we can use for some other purpose, for doing some other R&D, and for future innovative solution which can enable business in different way. So yeah, it's important to think how we can optimize our existing solution. So that is the outcome from this solution. And how are we solving the problem? So as I mentioned, okay, we have the problem, I mean, problem we know, and that okay, this SAP is classical application. It doesn't directly provide a lot of flexibility to run in cloud. So we are trying to reduce that and solve that using our custom solution. And so I can compare this solution similarly to virtual machine scale sets, which we can use for, say, running a web application, where we can tune or configure that, okay, if the threshold, CPU threshold or other threshold goes beyond this, scale out, and if the load is less, scale in. So similarly, we are also doing it using our own custom solution. Yeah. So we will
So
cover the
Santosh,
architecture. Yes.
So this is basically auto scaling for the SAP application server layer.
Yes.
Right. So not the database part, not the central services. Right.
No.
That's right. Gurun. It's for application servers.
Because
Santosh, when you mention VM skill sets, can you later? I know the reasons behind. Goran and I discussed already a million times about that. Why not using VM skill sets? Just mention later, maybe to explain people why we cannot use VM skill sets currently, maybe in the future.
Sure. Yeah. So right now, yeah, okay, we can explain that later. Yeah. So so solution outcome we will cover in our deck, and also we have a video demo which is a recorded. So why video demo? So this solution requires lot hours to explain scale in and out. So it requires like generating lot of load, and running. That load should we increase the load and decrease the load so that we can scale in or out and show this. But yeah, because it takes time to generate load and also shut down SAP instances, shut down VMs, and also again reverse this process. So that's why we have recorded this prior, so that we can show as much as possible quickly to explain and also to elaborate how it works.
Perfect. Yeah.
Karan. Yeah. So we as we know that when we run our SAP workloads, database size and overall load keeps on increasing as we add more users, or as we integrate with more systems upstream or downstream. So this infrastructure cost, how we can optimize? So there are different ways, like we have mentioned in other approaches like data archiving, or like size reduction, or like uh, there are snoozing is one. So that we have explained in many other blogs, internally, that okay, we can use all those options to optimize cost, and this is also one of the same option to optimize cost. And because cloud provides pay as you go option, so we can leverage this kind of solution to optimize our infrastructure cost. And so for different systems we have different configuration. So some systems will have more number of app servers, some will have less. So this solution can fit into some systems where like we have at least minimum 4 to 5 app servers in system. If say we have only 1 or 2, then this doesn't fit to that configuration. That's why it makes sense for specific environment or specific configuration, and we also don't have similar configuration for all SAP systems. So that's why one size doesn't fit, and still we have to solve that problem. And as I mentioned, so when suppose we have to optimize cost manually, then again it will require a lot of manual effort and mistakes are possible. So that's why we don't want to have any manual intervention in this.
Just
Karan,
to
you
add,
want to add?
yeah,
Yeah.
just to add to Santosh's point on the same. So, like people who have worked on any kind of SAP infrastructure, be it small or be it big, we all have experienced that initially, while in the inception stage of that in SAP infrastructure, there is one architect who probably decides on the sizing requirements of the system based on the scale that the system expects, and the scale is probably something that keeps varying throughout SAP infrastructure's lifetime. So we basically we are what we do in as an equivalent is like we go out in the store and get a t-shirt of the largest size for our SAP infrastructure, and then we stick to that size throughout our journey, and the only place like decisions that we take in the entire journey is when we face some complexities and we need a larger scale. So that's the only complexities that we think about in the environment. We do not think about what if there are temporary reasons to scale out, or there are temporary times when we do not need that kind of sizing requirements for the infrastructure. So like I cannot stress that enough, that how much this happens in so many different SAP infrastructures that we have. So we really thought about that, and we thought that this is a very common theme throughout all the SAP infrastructures.
So maybe just out of interest, you mentioned you have the peaks, and so how often there would be the peaks, and how much would be outside of the peaks typical utilization on the app servers in the CPU, for example, if you wouldn't stop the stuff, and which happened actually, I guess, in your on-premise environment in the past.
Sure. So peaks are usually happening in terms of the business seasons, like holiday seasons, month ends. Now, when we are doing this discussion, we probably are thinking about the production environment. But even when we are not considering the production environment, consider the test environment. Test environments are configured almost at the same scale as production, so as to mimic the effect of production environments. While the load on test environments is much lesser, and it like happens on like say a specific times, like during business hours and not on off business hours and other stuff. So taking all these patterns into account, there's a very fixed pattern of when the spikes come in, more so in the production environment where we see spikes at a higher frequency, but in the test it's very expected. Test environment and non-production environment, it gets a very expected pattern of load that comes into the system.
Yeah, and I would like to add here. So we are we also have a separate blog on telemetry. So as we are capturing all the metrics in telemetry, we can build a machine learning model with say last 2 years data or 3 years data, and we can also predict, okay, what are the periods where we are seeing high load. And based on that, we can include that in our solution, and we don't need to even think, okay, when are we going to see more load or maximum load, and based on that, tool itself will machine learning itself will take decisions.
Yeah, and we're doing this already, or is this just
it is in roadmap? Yeah, it was in roadmap already added, and yeah, because it is complex and it's evolving, so yeah, we have plans to do that.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes.
So so as we mentioned about the problem, so with this solution we are solving all those problems. So we don't we will be optimizing infrastructure cost. We don't need to look for the peaks and other things, and system itself has enough room, or we can say flexibility, to keep some buffer and to prevent any kind of adverse impact, and no manual monitoring is required because we have the telemetry and all the real-time data is available for performance and workload. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
You want me to move ahead, Santosh?
Yes, please. Yeah. So Karan, you can explain the architecture.
Yeah. So the architecture that we initially started with, so probably something that that probably might have got missed in the discussion yet. So this solution has like started inception of the solution started in an internal Microsoft hackathon that we have every year. And that's how we initially started the idea and thought about how we could implement the solution. And we have come leaps and bounds since that, where we have done quite a lot of iterations in terms of the architecture, so that you depend on Azure services as much as possible and do not go for customizations wherever needed, so that it becomes sort of a generic model that can be taken up by customers. So that's where we have tried to use multiple different Azure services to integrate and function together as a patchwork of different services to help achieve the goal that we have. So yeah, so I'll go through the entire architecture diagram here. So you can see that this is the inside the dotted line box that we have is our SAP infrastructure that we are running currently. So this is the traditional SAP architecture that we're running. We have the message server, we have multiple app servers over here. We Most of our customers that are like the people who are as implementing SAP on Azure, they are these days they are connecting their SAP environments to Azure Log Analytics because it provides a very seamless way of integration. So like we do not require much customization in order to get started, but for more advanced kind of metrics, we require some kind of a customization in terms of scripting to get some SAP related data.
One question regarding that. Are you leveraging using Azure Monitor for SAP to collect all those information for backend system and put it on Log Analytics, or you're using your own?
We are using our own. So the development of this tool started before private preview of Azure Monitor of SAP.
Okay.
So we already had a telemetry framework in place by then, and that's why we are using this. Yeah. So we collect, like we have PowerShell scripts in place inside these virtual machines as a part of task schedulers, which capture the telemetry events that happen in the system. We already have a blog published based on how the telemetry framework is configured. So we use the same telemetry framework that we configured in order to have this like integrate it, bring it into our auto scaling solution. We use the same framework over here. So we capture a lot of the information regarding, say, instance statuses and work process load information in the message server. This logs that are generated, these are automatically pulled into Azure Log Analytics, which holds this for a specified like retention period. Then this is the flow from as a message server to Log Analytics. Then we have an Azure Logic app, which acts as a orchestrator of various different like tasks which are hosted in runbooks. So we are using Azure Logic apps because it acts as a really good orchestrator in terms of recurrence schedules that we saw. Like it has an option to schedule jobs based on recurrence of having a very minute granular level of say 1 minute as well. Though 1 minute would be an overkill, but if required, it can also go ahead and schedule jobs on a 1 minute basis. So that's why we are using Azure Logic apps. Moreover, we like try to have some sort of a representation in Logic apps so that the flow is visually represented. Not all admins are very comfortable with code as such. So that's why it becomes a very friendly solution for admins to get started with the solution, as well as then have some customizations and implementation details in the runbooks over here that we see. So the Azure Logic apps, this Azure Logic app talks to our application database, that is the SQL database that is hosted on Azure, and it checks for all the systems that need the that for which we have auto scaling enabled. So it talks basically the Azure Logic app talks to the SQL database to figure out what all environments we need to have auto scaling on. Then according to the information that it talks to SQL database, it talks to the runbooks and it starts triggering runbooks based on those environments that have been configured in the SQL database. So I think we can go into detail of each and every runbook after probably as the demo continues. So the demo will go in sort of a detail with each and every runbook over here. Each and every runbook has a different purpose. These runbooks are configured in such a way that we do not rely on one runbook to perform all the operations, because we want tasks to happen asynchronously. We do not want the runbook to be waiting for a VM to be shut down and then go for the next operation. We just want to trigger that operation with another runbook. Now, why we
Yeah.
use
So
another runbook over here would be because runbooks provide us extensive like features for logging and tracking of various different runbooks and how whether they've went successfully or not. Santosh, you had something to add on.
yeah, Karan. So I just wanted to add one point here is so SQL database we are using here. So that SQL database keeps all the metadata information about all the system IDs or SIDs which we have onboarded for scale in or out, so auto scaling. So we have designed the system in such a way that in SQL database, when suppose we are adding say SID1, system ID1, we can configure certain metrics, certain buffers or thresholds. So that can be defined or configured for differently for each system. So it doesn't need to be same for all systems. So suppose
Yeah.
we feel that okay, some system we can aggressively scale in much faster or like more servers, so we can define the values in that form. And for some systems we want to be conservative, we can keep the thresholds much higher, so that I mean we do, or say like buffers very high, so that we don't scale in or out more servers so frequently. So I mean it gives a lot of flexibility, and I mean we can define that in SQL database. Yeah.
Yeah, and it also helps to clarify that. So we receive many questions that is this SQL database the SAP database that we hosts?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we wanted to clarify that so that this is not the SAP database and we do not need access to the SAP database in order to run this function over here. Also, since stopping SAP application on the application level sometimes requires some privileges in terms of the account that runs the services, we have the key vault to manage the secrets for the specific accounts that
Mhm.
that require to run these operations. So this gives a good overview of the various different components and how these components communicate with each other and the whole system design of the process. Let me go ahead and probably yeah, so we can come back to this later, right, Santosh? Let's go ahead with the demo first. You're on mute, Santosh.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was saying, yeah, so we can go to demo, and we can again, I'm just repeating that we have this video demo because it's time consuming to generate, load, show the scale in and scale out process. That's why we have done it in 10 minutes. After spending hours, we have squeezed it in 10-minute video. Yeah,
Yeah.
Perfect.
thank you.
So let me just reshare. There's some problem with the audio. Give me a minute.
While Karen is doing this, Santosh, can you give do you have an idea how many SAP systems are currently controlled by this SAP auto scaling? Like how many systems are in the SQL database there?
Right now, 4 are there, 3 more we are going to add.
Oh, great. Okay.
Okay. Let me know if you guys are able to hear the audio from the video.
Okay.
The video has the audio as well, so let me know.
Okay.
Hello everyone. So today
Yeah,
was it available?
we got it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello everyone. So today we'll be going through the entire dynamic scaling or auto scaling for SAP application servers preview. So I will be walking you through each and every component which was used in the architecture diagram and how the representation lies in Azure so that it becomes easier to understand how we need to configure some components within Azure. Then we will also walk through a small demo where we will use one of our systems and then enable the solution to run on that system. Uh, let's start. We should be good to start. The screen which you're seeing currently is the Logic App information view. The Logic App, we'll go to the Logic App designer view to understand what this Logic App exactly does. So this logic app is the main trigger for the solution. So we have a recurrence trigger which is scheduled to run every 5 minutes, which schedules and runs runbooks on every 5 minutes. So our solution has three modes. That is enabled mode. So this will run a SQL command in the SQL operational DB and schedule all the runbooks accordingly for the dynamic scaling solution. Then the second one is the disabled mode where it does not perform any action. Third one is the scale out mode. So if we suddenly want all the virtual machines to be up, then we will use the scale out mode. It will initiate a parallel scale out of all the virtual machines and it will start all the virtual machines. The enabled mode, that is the dynamic scaling mode, this will go ahead and it will check for the null values. If it's not null, that means there are some systems on which dynamic scaling is enabled. We For each of those systems we will create two jobs. The first job, as we'll see further, will be the one which will monitor the telemetry data and accordingly mark the virtual machines for scale out, scale in, or stopping the SAP instance or starting the SAP instance. And the second one will perform all the Azure related work like starting the virtual machine actually and stopping the virtual machine, updating the same details in our SQL database. We talked about runbooks that actually perform all the work which the solution entails. So we are going to now see all the runbooks which are responsible for performing the actions. So we have three runbooks which are primarily responsible for performing actions. As I mentioned, the monitor dynamic scaling load marks the virtual machines. Azure interface performs the Azure work like stopping and starting Azure virtual machines. Scale out mode is for the complete scale out mode, which if a situation arises where you want all the virtual machines up suddenly. The runbooks, each and every runbook has the job details which are mentioned here. So each and every scheduled task which by the logic app is being recorded over here with a separate job ID. Each of these job IDs itself has some logs associated with it, so that we can track how the runbook jobs have been submitted and whether they are going successfully or not. So it provides some sort of an inherent logging mechanism which you will not have to externally configure. On the SAP level, we will be using soft shutdown commandlet, which is a graceful shutdown of the application server, which makes sure that each and every process on the application server is completed before shutting the application server down or adjusted by another application server. So this is the whole flowchart which it follows in the backend. Uh, the internal working of this soft shutdown feature is not relevant to this because there is extensive documentation available through SAP on how to issue a soft shutdown through the SAP control commandlet and also how to issue a instant start using SAP control commandlet. So now we know that we are triggering some SAP level commands through Azure. So let's understand how we are taking care of that. So as we know that we will be initiating a soft shutdown command and SAP start command to the SAP application through Azure. So we will be taking care of this again by using the SAP control command, and to avoid any access related issues, we will be using the virtual machine custom extension. So when we go to the extensions, there's a custom script extension which allows us to run a script inside the virtual machine. So the script will be scheduled inside the virtual machine. It will get the relevant exe file and it will issue a soft shutdown command or a start command on the specific SAP instance. So the good thing about this is that since like all the SAP start and soft shutdown command can be issued through the CI itself, this extension only needs to be configured on the central instance, as the central instance is capable of starting or initiating a soft shutdown on all of the app servers. Let's see the solution in action now in the actual system. So this is our sandbox system. we will be seeing this how the solution works in the system. So if we go into the SM51 view, the solution is currently disabled and the system is configured at 25 application servers. After running the solution, we will try to figure out what application servers out of these 25 can be taken down, and accordingly compute cost for those application servers can be saved. We have now enabled the dynamic scaling solution on one of our system, the sandbox system, the one which we saw the SM51 view for. We will be now checking how the logic app run went through. So we can see that the logic app run succeeded. We have all the steps here of the success. It'll load. Yeah. So we can see that all the steps in the logic apps have succeeded. Let's drill deeper and let's understand how the runbook went. So as I mentioned that the runbook also features logs, which happens naturally as partial comments. So we can see over here that the runbook has captured that it is scaling in by shutting down an SAP instance, which is mentioned here. Now we move to the SM51 view over here, and we can see that the same instance which was mentioned there has been moved to the soft shutdown status. This instance will remain in the soft shutdown status until the whole flowchart of activities is completed and every single process running in the server is ended. Only then will it move from soft shutdown to gray status. So we have the tool running in the environment for some time now. We have lowered the load in the system to just demonstrate how the scaling works. We will just go to the SM51 view to get an idea of how it has scaled in all the instances. So initially there were 25 instances. Now there are 12 instances. The system is now in a saturated state because that means that no more instances will go down. That is because each and every group has at least one instance preserved in it, so that every single functional aspect of the whole system is still functional by having at least one application server to its dispense whenever needed. So we can also check the Azure view. So this view basically states the SAP instance that in SAP instances that are up. We have a graceful wait period that waits for some time after the SAP instance is turned down, so that we can go ahead and shut down the virtual machine actually to save costs. We can see here that over here that these are the virtual machines that are responsible for running these SAP instances, and we can see that the instances for which the SAP was stopped, they have also been turned to a deallocated state in Azure. We will now see the scale out mechanism in action. We have increased the load in the system in order to trigger some scale outs. The system will read the increased load information in the groups through the telemetry framework. Then this runbook will be triggered, which will monitor that telemetry information and accordingly decide which virtual machine needs to be started. So we can see over here that the load in these group names have been increased. So after increasing the load in these groups, it detected that we should go ahead and start this virtual machine over here. We can also go ahead and check the view in SM51. Initially we had 12 and now we can see that we have 15 application server instances which have been started. This is as a result of the scale out mechanism. As the load increases, it will keep on starting virtual machines up until it has the whole configured capacity of 25 virtual machines. All of them will be up. That's when it will detect that scale out cannot be triggered further.
Great. That looks really nice. And you're saying this is done for 3 systems already in a productive way?
4.
And there are
4 systems.
4, sorry. Okay, and 3 more are already planned.
Yeah. Karan, you can go back to other slides which are pending.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there might be some questions regarding why we are going up from 25 to 12 and we're just keeping one app server. So this was a sandbox environment. So we had more freedom in terms of the aggressive thresholds that we could keep. So we were okay with having one app server in the backend. In case of a real scenario, we can probably have say at least 2 application servers for each function so that we have high availability setup. So that's what I just wanted to clarify on.
And also
So-
there is one, so one more important aspect is we also did demo to one of the large customer in US, and there were questions like, yeah, here we are using fixed number of servers which are pre-installed, which has like VMs are pre-built and the SAP instance is also pre-installed, but we can do it with fixed VMs with pre-installed SAP, and we can also provision new VMs with golden image and like add those automatically or like without any manual intervention using logic apps, and for that we just need additional code, and that is also possible. But in our case, we found that okay, we fixed number of servers help us, and anyway having fixed number of VMs, it doesn't increase much cost, because if VM itself is down, storage cost is very minimal because we don't have so many data drives. We have only hardly P10 drives or even smaller, because we don't need so much bigger disks on app servers.
So what kind of metrics do you use basically to decide to scale in or out? I guess CPU must be the one, right? So, but what else do you use?
No,
How do
actually
you-
we are so we are actually using the number of work processes and how many work processes are actually in use and how many are free. So we use that ratio, and we also take care of the number of like groups. So suppose if one group has say 4 app servers and all are say configured with say 30 work processes each, that means we have 120 total processes, and say out of those 4 servers, out of 120 work processes, say we have only 40 in use, that means we have 80 unused. So we can definitely see that okay, overall for this group with 4 app servers, we have there is a room to scale in and optimize costs. So what we do is okay, we will put the best app server in that group which has least work processes in use, and we will put that in soft shutdown so that new requests will not come into that, and all the running requests will complete, and then server will become unavailable and it will go into shutdown phase.
Okay,
And
so
how we
basically you
can-
have. Go on.
Yeah, go on.
No, so basically, I guess because you're using, if the work processes are occupied or not or free, you have lower and upper threshold to decide, okay, now there are too many of them are free, let's scale in, or maybe now we reach some certain percentage of all of them being in use, let's add some or start a new app server, right? I guess that is the way to do it. So, but you mentioned there are 4 app server part of a group. I guess, do you mean a load balancing group of the SAP, or what? How do you handle those kind of, like, I guess you should use user logon groups, batch logon groups, different logon groups. So how do you handle those kind of stuff, so that proper user or proper batch jobs always have some app server which is there and available?
So we have from SAP side, we have the provision where we have a transparent table which gives us access to all these groups. So we have the mapping between groups and the specific app server that is mapped to that specific group.
Okay.
So whenever a scale in decision is made, it is aware of all the groups that the app server is in. So the scale in will not perform if there is a group which is getting affected in terms of the required availability.
Okay, cool.
So
really great.
regarding that, you mentioned the batch groups. Is there any work in that scenario where you can say, okay, I know that, Thursday and Friday, I need my batch groups because I will run some batch jobs, and during the other days, I will not use those servers at all? There are scenarios like that?
Not in our environment. So maybe like we do not have very specific environment. So in fact, we did not see the solution to be ideal for batch groups as such, because batch
Okay.
groups usually we had in our environment, we run heavy batch jobs. So we
Okay.
do require the compute resources that have been assigned. So that's why we did not see it as affected for batch resources, but other resources like dialog or update or spool, this was effective.
Okay.
And to add to this, so anytime the high level logic is okay. Suppose we have say 4 app servers for say batch or dialog or any group. So anytime we don't scale in or shut down more than 50%. So at least 50% capacity will always be available. So even if there is no load, and we can still define it, but yeah, what we are doing is right now we are going conservative and keeping at least 50% workload. So suppose if there are say 5 app servers, so minimum 3 will always remain available and 2 will have option like it can go down. So there is no fixed like okay, 1, 2, 3 will remain available and 4, 5 will only go down. So it's not like that. 1 or 2 can also go down, 3, 4 can also go down, 4, 5 can also go down. So any server from that combination will go down. Only condition is 50% should remain available. That means in case of 5, 3 will become more than 50%. So only 2 will go down.
Yeah, and
Okay.
adding to your question, Robert, so we are agnostic to the type of the group. We do not check whether the group is batch group or dialog group. So we are agnostic to that information. So in case of our environment, maybe we do not prefer for batch groups to scale a lot. We need that rigidity in terms of batch groups, but we like the flexibility provided by the solution for dialog groups. For some of our partners, like you said, that there is a lot of changes in terms of batch load. So since we are agnostic to the type of the group, we can support this auto scaling on batch servers as well. That should not be a problem at all.
Do you separate the batch logon groups from the user groups? So
that is yeah, so that is separated, right? Already we have that. Yeah, we have that separately available in the database, SAP database.
I mean, what I really love about this solution is that unlike a lot of other things that I've heard with other customers, where you just monitor the CPU load of the virtual machine and you take a guess there, oh, the CPU load is 80% or whatever. So let's, like with virtual with scale sets, VM scale sets, for example, where that's the only metrics that you can react, that you're really looking into the SAP system, and from the information from the SAP system, actually similar like what this information that we get with the Azure Monitor for SAP solutions, that we can look inside the SAP system and then take this metrics, take the information there and do stuff on that. I think that's really fascinating. So from my point of view, the next big question is, if I'm listening, if I'm a customer, how can I use this? Is there, I don't think it's on GitHub available yet, or are there plans, or how could I, if I like this, what you just have shown us, how could I benefit from this, or do I need to replicate everything? I mean, I know Goran has some run books already published that I could probably reuse, but I would need to build a lot of stuff there. Are there any plans from you to publish this?
Yeah, so Holger, we were discussing internally, and so we found we have one possibility that okay, Azure Monitor for SAP is the one vehicle which we can use in future. So we are in discussion. We haven't finalized, but Azure Monitor for SAP could be one vehicle which can be used to roll this out as a service or as a new tool or solution itself for customers. So one suggestion here is, for any customer, we have to first look inside the SAP system environment, or the how we have defined groups and app servers. So that combination should be really well defined, or say like should be optimized before we actually use this. So for some customers, like for us also, there were some cases which was not optimal. So I'll take example. So in one app VM, we suppose if we are running 2 or more SAP instances, in that case it would be very difficult to bring down that VM. And if we suppose if we are running 2 SAP instances in a VM, if we are seeing eligibility for one SAP instance that can go down, but other is still busy, in that case we are bringing down one SAP instance, but we won't be able to shut down the VM. And if we don't shut down, we are not able to save cost. So in that case, it makes sense to split those app servers or SAP instances into different VMs. And suppose if we are, say, using E32, we can use two E16, and still we will pay same cost, and we will have a lot of flexibility to reduce cost and optimize cost. I mean,
Yeah, this is one of the most important, I think, very good example, because in most cases we have seen on-premise that customers using very fatty, big one application server or two big application server, and this is exactly the one good use case scenario where they can see the advantage of using this old scale out SAP models, and benefit from scalability in the cloud. So I asked on the beginning of the video, what about VM scale set? Why not? You're on mute.
Santosh, you're on mute.
Sorry, yeah. So I'm sorry. So VM scale set, there is no direct mechanism for SAP to use VM scale set. So there are a lot of Azure services, say like SQL database. When I explored long back, there was no option to use SQL database, SQL PaaS database with SAP. So there are many such cases. So BMSS is also similar. I did not, find a direct way to use VMSS in case of app servers. So that's why we are continuing with virtual machines.
Okay. I'm asking because I sometimes receive the questions from partner, okay, why we cannot leverage, And there's because I think the first is that in VM scale set, we are starting from same image, So then if we are doing that, we will have always the same application instances, and this can produce some issues later. And as you mentioned, SAP systems are not so cloud ready from infrastructure perspective, are still very old-fashioned way of architecture. Great. Very nice, very interesting scenarios you built there. Very nice.
I remember
our partners will start to ask us after this video when we plan to publish this. Probably.
So a lot of pressure on you now.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember from my SAP time on SAP IT running their own stuff, on premise initially, so years ago. And of course, you have to oversize. You have to, because you need to cover the peaks. You have no other choice. You need to buy that kind of hardware in advance. But then you have a peaks, one in a quarter, and basically which is few days, maybe 2-3 days, and the rest of the stuff I was checking CPU utilization was like 5%. That's such a waste. So. That's a huge potential in the cloud for cost savings. So basically optimizing and that's an app servers are ideal because, typically database would be a big VM. Maybe you have an HA, again, a big VM, central services, smaller one, but app server, they're huge. You showed you have like 20, right?
That's for sandbox, 20 for sandbox, Goran.
Exactly.
So just imagine going up to production. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So huge potential here, basically, for the cost saving. Again, in an automated way, this is the ideal way, scale out and scale in as per need. Yeah, great.
That's right. And most of the other services that we currently build, so any other products that we build, we like every single product has reached a saturation in terms of horizontal scaling. But I do see this that SAP infrastructures are still lagging behind in terms of accepting horizontal scaling. We still rely on manual vertical scaling so much that it ends up like the whole environment ends up so inconsistent, where some specific virtual machines are scaled up, some specific machines are scaled down in terms of vertical scaling. But we do not use the power of cloud to enable us for horizontal scaling yet.
Yeah. Right. And I guess with the scale out, and you could scale up, of course, with the same app server, but this is a downtime because you need to reboot the VM. When
That's right.
To scale out, you are just adding additional app server without any impact on the existing running processes and users, right? So it's from availability perspective, it makes more sense to me, honestly. Here.
And that was the logic.
Yeah.
And how you okay, Holger? I promise last question. So regarding, I mean, probably you need to. You already mentioned you are preparing that virtual machine. So that means they are already part of availability set, or you are also putting that automatically in availability set.
No, so we are not using availability set anymore. We use availability zones, and yeah, that's why that complexity is not there, and we can decide. I mean, yeah, we are in our case we are using fixed set of virtual machines because it also makes sense, because if suppose you have already provisioned VM and pre-installed SAP say like SAP App Server, then you are only going to pay for say disks, and you can keep say, I mean, very small disks, and you can pay like just few tens of dollars per month. It won't cost say hundreds of dollars, and compute cost is the highest for app server, and we still have flexibility to provision VMs on the fly, and again like copy the required exes and also add that into a group. So that is also possible, and we can do that. We haven't done that yet, but yeah, because it is not required for our case, but we know what is required to enable that on the fly provisioning and adding of app server.
And regarding PPGs, I mean, more or less same question.
Yes, so I think yeah, PPG also. I mean, we can use, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Santosh, Karan, for these insights. I think this was also really interesting. I'm sure once you publish this, you once you have the discussions with the Azure Monitor for SAP solution and so on, once this is available for customers and partners to consume, let us know, and then we can set up another call, or at least we can promote and talk about this again. So it was really great having you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
With this, I think, yeah, we're done for this week, and yeah, thanks again, and looking forward to seeing you again on the podcast.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Holger.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Robert.
Great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.